But yeah, it's from that South Park episode. Like, I'm going to stick my thumb up his butt just to piss this thing off.
Is that all?
Oh, and there's the intro. Welcome back to the NerdNest, everybody. We took a week off because I was feeling a little bit under the weather last week, and we missed a lot of news. And this episode is going to be the NerdNest Game Awards. So we are going to be nominating games in a bunch of different categories, and then I'm going to put a Google form down below that like button that you guys can go and you can click on, and you can vote and pick which of our nominees is actually going to win. So we don't pick the winners, we're just the nominators. But because we didn't have an episode last week, I'm going to try and weave in as many news stories in between our categories as we can. So with all that being said, I want us to start off with news today, and that is this dropped today. SteamOS is coming to the Legion Go. Rich, you posted this in our private Discord. You want to set this up?
Yep. So to be clear, might soon come is the
yeah, it's rumors.
So this is Lenovo Legion Go S, and there is an image that Russ, Carrie, do you guys know if this is an official image or like was it a part of a leak? No, we don't know.
I think it's still a leak. Like it's not official.
It's still
I'm shaking
category.
Say it's not a leak.
Yeah, okay. They have never announced the S yet, as far as I know yet. It's just been leaked.
Yeah. So the interesting thing about this leak is that it has a Steam button and a quick access menu button. So similar configuration to the ROG Ally X, except the top row is Steam on the left and quick access on the right. And yeah, so the speculation from, I think it was Tom Warren that wrote this piece on The Verge, who thinks that this could be the first SteamOS handheld, that's not the Steam Deck. One other theory that my friend Mosquito brought up in our Discord is that it might not be SteamOS. It might just be like Steam input, right? So it might have, you remember there was recently like the branding guidelines from Valve for a few different things. One of them was powered by SteamOS, but the other one was Steam compatible hardware, and it pointed to the controls essentially. So having gyroscopic controls, having at least 2 rebindable buttons, having capacitive touch sticks, and it would need a Steam button and a quick access menu button for it to be Steam compatible hardware. So it could be that this is just a normal handheld, but it's Steam compatible in terms of the input.
Yeah.
So when we talk about Steam Steam compatible, I think it's important that everybody understands that even devices that don't have Steam buttons or quick access menu buttons or capacitive thumbsticks, they'll still work with Steam. Valve is just saying, if you want to put Steam compatible on a box that people will see when they go into a store or on a website when they go to buy this thing, you got to have these things, and then you can use that as this is like a thing, almost like what's the TV standard that you set up your console and it's like, do you want to try
HDMI CEC?
No, Dolby, like Dolby or whatever. It's Dolby, like, you want to try Dolby, and you hit a button and it does its thing, and it's like, hey, it's Dolby compatible. And like somebody might buy a TV and they'll say, oh, it's a Dolby compatible TV. Well, I know that's a standard that everybody can get behind. That's what I think that this is. Now, a second ago, I cut off Carrie. What were you going to say before I jumped in?
So there's 2 things. We also saw that there's another leak for Lenovo where they're redoing the original with an OLED screen.
Just came out like an hour ago.
Yeah.
Oh, really?
Yeah, so it's still detachable stuff, and supposedly an OLED panel, likely the Z2E, because the S version, spec-wise, which has been leaked before, a lot of people had asked me questions about it. They're like, "Oh, this looks like it's gonna be pretty good," and I was like, "That's just a really old chip in there. That's the 6800U," and they got like kind of deflated by it. But at the same token, it should be inexpensive, right? So that's the key takeaway there. That it would be what's on there would still be better than a Steam Deck. So if they can be better than a Steam Deck and be like $400 or $500, that's still good. that still enters there. So
Yeah, I
and
mean,
even if it doesn't,
6800. Oh, go ahead. Sorry. I was going to say 6800U handhelds are pretty decent. You know, when they came out around the same time as the Steam Deck, maybe a little bit after, and they were more powerful. They drained the battery faster. But still, if it's going to be a budget handheld, you know, that S1, like $400 or $500, then I think it might be enticing.
Yeah.
And they could throw in a big ass battery.
Right.
Like that's what everybody seems to be doing, is trying to brute force with a big battery so that they can still match the.
I think from video cards, the video with a Z at the end of it, they like leak stuff. I think that they have the leaked specs being a 55 watt hour battery, 54.5 or something. So it's larger than, you know, an LCD and an OLED Steam Deck, but not like an 80 watt hour battery, which would be ideal.
Yeah. And so the one thing about this new one, with the OLED 8.8 inch one, the leaks are like really crystal clear images. So I think it's real, but there's no specs. But the controllers are really interesting to me because they're new. They're rounded around the sides. You know, I didn't like the flatness of the 90-degree angle in the old one. So they're rounded on the sides, and they have 4 function buttons. So start and select, then other function buttons up top. So there's like 2. And then there's also 2 down on the bottom left, like how it was with the original Legion Go, which they allowed us to kind of map between, because those originally were start and select, super annoying. So now it looks like they've got maybe Steam input buttons and then also their own Lenovo buttons. I'm not really sure. But you got 4 function buttons in addition to select and start on this controller, which is interesting.
And you're right, Russ, it does look really comfortable. We kind of brushed over that, but like the ergonomics look nice. So yeah, it could be really good.
I'm Googling it, and all I can find are like YouTube videos of people saying
on The Verge.
Steam Deck OLED versus what? Where is it?
The Verge. If you go on The Verge, it's on the front page. Scroll down a bit.
Okay,
but yeah, it's it looks very interesting, and it looks like a Gen 2 handheld from them, which is exactly what I want. You know what I mean? Like that. For honestly, like I always just wanted new controllers. Like I didn't need a new Lenovo Legion Go. I just wanted new controllers, but I appreciate that they're going to throw OLED in there, and obviously probably a new chip too.
Yeah, and just looking at it from the side, and I'm going to try and remember to put a picture on the screen when I edit the video here. Looking at it from the side, does it look to you guys like the tablet portion and the controllers are like narrow at the bottom and thicker at the top?
Yeah.
Like almost like that's where they're
the
putting
angle
extra
looks like that.
battery?
Maybe. It's really interesting to have like a non-square tablet like that. Who knows?
Reminds me of I don't remember what they called it, but when Nintendo brought out the thing that looked like a doorstop, the 2 screen, the 3DS that was looked like a
2DS.
little wedge.
Yeah.
That's what it looks like to me. Well, I think that these I love the idea of more competition in this space, because all that does is it means that we're going to see, you know, companies start stealing from each other. Oh, look at what they did. Well, all right, well, we can do that. Look, there's an 80 watt hour battery in the ROG Ally X. Valve can put an 80 watt hour battery in the Steam Deck, and you could play for a billion years or whatever. Yeah. So like that kind of thing is very exciting to me.
What do you guys think is going on at Lenovo? Where like, because didn't the original Legion Go leak as well?
It kind of did, yeah. There was like a weird, I think like some, I don't even remember.
There was there were like 3 or 4 different drops.
Yeah.
From like a website that gets a lot of views, but I personally had never heard of. Right,
Same.
They weren't someone that was known for these sort of leaks, and they had like these 3 or 4 series of like big drops of leaks for the Lenovo Legion Go, and now this with these, and you said it too, Carrie, like all of these lines of handhelds from Lenovo, like I think there's like 3 or 4 of them now of handhelds that have been being leaked by like videocards.com or whatever.
Yeah, they're pretty. So video cards and WCCF Tech, those are the 2 that always like sometimes they just print rumors, but they've been pretty good. Like, you know, whenever the whole rumor mill part of the thing and the leaks thing have been blurring the lines a lot lately, so you kind of have to like sift through it. But there's a lot of stuff that they talk about and like list specs or rumored specs, and you kind of try to like read through the lines of what's going on there. I think it really this S model is really going to depend on like where they price it, because the chip is competent. It's really just price. But the thing that interests me the most is that if they put a nice and attractive, because it just looks budget all over. It has like 512 gig SSD, 16 gigs of RAM, 6800U. So these are like last generation parts, lowest spec things that you get in these things now. So it's like when I look at that, I'm like, seems like they're targeting like $400 or $500, and it's going to be better than the Z1, lots better than the Z1, and in that same price bracket. So that the attractive part that comes in is like when these things go on sale, right? Then you're going to be like, oh, $300, $350 for, and then it's like, oh wow, that's excellent. So this is exciting for that reason, and I know that there's a contingent of people that, they just don't want to spend a lot on a handheld. Like $300 really is like the ceiling of their comfort zone. So then you want, they basically more or less will kind of favor like the AYN Odin 2 type of thing, and then they'll be in that range, or they'll get like a refurbished Steam Deck. Because that's where their price bracket is, or where they feel comfortable for these things.
I think this is a better budget option than the Z1 version of the Ally. You know what I mean? Like this is like, it's hitting that at or around the Steam Deck lowest price tier. And if it can do that, then that like really changes the whole argument about, Steam Deck is always best bang for your buck and stuff. It's like, well, this actually might be some pretty stiff competition, especially like you mentioned when they do those Best Buy sales or whatever.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. Well, there you have it. SteamOS on other hardware. The floodgates are opening. I, for one, am really excited about it. I hope that it turns out to be true, because I absolutely hate using Windows every time I have to use it. I was using it earlier this morning to try and do something, and it's been so long since I'd used Windows, I had to like look up how to do something. I was like, shit, I can't remember what I'm supposed to do now. Anyway. Let's move on to our first of the NerdNest Awards, and that one is for Best Modern Hardware. So each one of us are going to nominate our like the best hardware of the year that plays like modern games. And Carrie, I'm going to let you go first, man.
So what I put in the little bracket was something that was like off the beaten path or something. It was like outside the box. I forgot what I put there, but this is not something that is a by itself, but this series of product has been growing, and like the Minis Forum has an eGPU solution, and the B-Link has a eGPU solution where that ties into there. So for modern hardware, I'm going into like more of like not an accessory, it's a part and parcel of it, but these ideas that we are now starting to join low power devices with full power GPUs. And we have Minis Forum and all these other places where it's easier to get now. So that is what I am personally voting for. My favorite thing of modern hardware that has sprung up this year are those two things that have become available this year.
And what is it called, so I can put it in the?
So it's the Minis Forum.
I would say like eGPU dock. Yeah,
eGPU dock. It's like has an easy name. And then same for the B-Link GTI Link or something
or other.
Yeah But B-Link and those guys have them, but those I really like. I use the B-Link one now. It's in my living room, so it's basically my Steam. Well, I'm doing the Windows how-to thing very soon, but that's what I've been using, and it's been facilitating actually having a really good living room setup for a PC setup, and I'm really, really enjoying it. Super quiet, the best of all worlds, and not too power hungry.
Russ, what's your pick for your nomination for best modern hardware?
Yeah, I think a good point of clarification too is that with our nominees, we are not trying to say the same. Like we're not trying to agree with each other, right? We're each trying to come up with our own, basically, right? Because the viewers, you guys are going to be voting on it, and so. But I think that one of these other guys are going to have the same as me. But the ROG Ally X, I think for best modern hardware, just because it is. Like as far as handheld PCs that came out this year, you could argue maybe the white Steam Deck, but no, it's got to be this ROG Ally X. That 80 watt hour battery is a new benchmark, and I'm here for it. So,
Rich?
Yeah, I'm gonna double down. I thought at least one other person would go with Ally X. I thought maybe the whole panel might. So, yeah, I've only recently started going back to the Steam Deck OLED, or not exclusively, but aside from that, the point is, mostly since the ROG Ally-X came out, I've been using the Ally-X. The 80 watt hour battery is a great point. And to be clear, at least for me, I know it's a little bit different for you, Russ, but for me, Bazzite is a huge part of that, meaning that might not be the case if I didn't have Bazzite, right? So like that's a big part of that. But nonetheless, I'm getting almost everything that I got from the Steam Deck OLED, even the battery life, and then some, because now I have a bigger screen, not bigger in terms of size, but resolution. The VRR, all of that stuff. So that is the LIX for me.
And an interesting point about this too is that I actually own two ROG LIXs. I've got like the pre-production one that they sent me for preview, and then I have the review unit. And initially I did like dual booting with my review unit, and I actually changed that up. There was some underlying issues with Bazzite, but basically I wiped both, put Windows on one and Bazzite on the other instead of dual booting, because I was like, let's just simplify the process. And I was like, I'll grab whichever one I want when I want it. And I haven't touched the Windows one in weeks.
Look at that.
Which is crazy. You know what I mean? Like it's like more along the comfort of having a Windows option is like most important to me. But in practical use, it's a Bazzite machine, and I'm really loving that.
That's awesome.
So I also had on mine for best modern hardware the ROG Ally X, but I don't want I want people to have more than two options. So I'm going to change my vote, and I'm going to say I'm nominating the OLED Steam Deck. I really do love that machine. It's fantastic. The reason that the reason that the ROG Ally X gets used more is because I bought a 4 terabyte M.2 drive, and because they're cheaper because they use 2280 drives instead of 2230 drives, and I threw that in the ROG Ally X. So like that's where most of my games are. So I don't really have to uninstall or reinstall stuff on that. But on the Steam Deck, I only have a terabyte of storage. So a lot of times I will not use that only because I haven't upgraded the storage for that. But I might do that at some point. But the OLED Steam Deck is a fantastic pick if you're trying to pick between different modern hardware. What were you going to say, Rich?
100%. I was going to say if you want to put it in the vote as the limited edition, right? Like that's a good call from us too. That was
actually released this year. Yeah.
Yeah.
You can change mine to MSI Claw if you want, so that way it'll get 0 votes, but we have options.
Dude, it's gonna be like 3 days to qualify.
Did you guys see the PC Mag best brands and all that? Like the top gaming brands, like MSI Claw was higher than anyone would have expected.
Oh, right, I did see that.
Yeah,
it was like.
Yeah. I don't know, I guess some trolls or just really dedicated fans.
Sometimes, man.
Yeah, sometimes.
Those Intel fanboys. They come for you.
So the next thing that I have in my little version of the show notes that I was going to, because I'm interspersing the news between our categories, was going to be that Valve is working on possibly releasing a set-top box, but I think that we'll save that for later. And I want to take a second and talk about the MSI Claw 8 AI plus X3 DS new XL.
Yeah.
Whatever that thing is, like, because Carrie and Russ, you guys just went out to Los Angeles to go see this thing, right?
Yep.
Yeah, we got hands-on, basically a whole day event. Like, we had as much time, like, we had so much time with it, we got bored. You know what I mean? Because we could only do certain things, in that environment. And so we're just like, all right, what's next? Like, that's how much time they gave with us, which is great. And it was a influencer event, so not a press event, like it was just YouTubers there. And so we all, like, they let us poke and prod it. Like, a guy brought his SSD or SD card and was able to load up like certain games and stuff like that, like things beyond what they had loaded up, and they kind of just let us do it, which is cool.
That was so when Russ and I split up into different groups, and we were in like the pictures group first, which was like super boring for what it was. But the good news for us was like a lot of their setups were like not working, so they had an eGPU setup that was not set up correctly, and I was like, oh, we can fix that. So we're like looking at it, and I go into NVIDIA Inspector tool and I start like disabling rebar, and I run it again, and then I'm like, I wonder if it's bandwidth. And then ETA Prime doesn't even ask anyone. He just like rips Thunderbolt cable out of like another demo unit. Doesn't ask anyone. He's like, yoink, puts it in there, and then we get CUDA Z, and we see that it's at 2.6 gigabytes a second. And you're like, okay, that's good. Let's run it again. I'm like, okay, yeah, I think that's good. And then they all started like taking pictures. We're like, yeah, we're gonna send it back to them and see if they can do better than that. So that was like the only thing that we had, was that we were just looking at that stuff. But a lot of the picture side of things, they had Tom Clancy's thing set up. But during the night, they had an update. So they were downloading an 8 gigabyte update over hotel Wi-Fi. So it was taking the entire time that we were in there. So we were just kind of like, kind of just taking pictures. They had a gutted version, so we can see it all disassembled. And then we like went into the other area. One thing, and I make fun of Stubbs from Retro Handhelds about this all the time, because he always talks about how good the sound is on the Claw, like that little. It's got the good.
At least it's got good speakers.
Yeah, I can use this as a boombox. The new speakers that they have on there, they called it Generation 4 Rubber, which is hilarious to me. But it's like how they space the speakers is just space so that the bass isn't like, you can actually feel the bass in your hands, and the low frequency response is really good. But anecdotally, and this is a true story, I left the event, one of the rooms, and I walked around to go get some coffee, and then I came back, and as I was coming in, I hear someone doing like donuts in a car, like, and I'm like looking outside, I'm like, what the hell? And then I see it's someone just playing Dirt Rally on the Claw, and I was like, oh goodness gracious, that sound is better.
Wow.
Yeah,
really good audio.
That's pretty impressive.
Yeah. They are very. The sound is very impressive on those.
So, what's your reaction? Like, how do you feel about this device now that you've had hands on with it, Russ?
Like the Legion Go that we were just looking at, this feels like a Gen 2 product. My number one thing that I like about it is the feel of the ergonomics. I thought I was going to hate it because the grip is smaller than it was on the previous one, so it's flatter. But because it's a 16:10 display now, they made it bigger. It now is taller because of that taller aspect ratio. So it's just like so much space vertically for your hands that it kind of offsets all of that. Like it feels like I got so much space to hold the thing. So it actually does feel comfortable. I just have to, instead of thinking about it as like rounding around my hands, I think about it more like just holding a real nice tablet or something, and so it is comfortable to hold. I really like the shoulder and trigger buttons as well. I think they did a big improvement on those. That was kind of mixed. Some people didn't like that. Some people did. Same thing with the D-pad. Like I personally didn't like the D-pad for Street Fighter, but for everything else, it was fine, Yeah, I think overall it feels Gen 2. The efficiency of that chip is very promising, but I needed to get it home to test. Like I can't test in that kind of environment and make any definitive statement. So I honestly didn't make a video about it. I was like, thank you for letting me see this, but I cannot speak about this yet until I actually get it at home, just because it just feels like a conflict.
It's all those sort of events, right? They have cherry picked games, right? So
that's a funny thing too, is that the games they picked, not good choices. They had Street Fighter 6 going, and it was lagging all over the place. I'm like, you couldn't find any other game to like show optimal stuff. Like that was funny. Anyway, yeah, I know what you mean though.
Yeah, so especially in the case where like drivers are sort of in flight, right? These may be things where like we have drivers ready for these, so we'll show off these, but we don't have them ready for such and such. So
right.
It's a curious thing to do, right? Like those sort of videos, because it feels like it's very much a developing thing, and so who knows what's going to change between now and release.
Yeah, one really interesting thing is that they are totally listening. So like, they showed me like this. It wasn't part of their main slide deck, but they showed me later. They like did research into hand ergonomics, like deep dives into like books about it and stuff, and engineers, and they even came up with a software that would map your hand, and then that's how they measured distances for the buttons and everything. Like they spent so much time on it. And as I was talking to the guy, just like the marketing guy or whatever, it's like, yeah, and we watched your Legion Go video where you whined about like the 90-degree angle, and so we like changed all that too. I'm like, that was a deeper level than I was expecting, where they're like, we even watched your videos on competitor devices and what you liked and didn't like, and made adjustments based on that. So mad props to that kind of whole engineering throughput. Like they're being that thorough about it. I really like that. And so, but yeah, it's still an Intel chip, and like you said, like they are building the train on the tracks as it's going in terms of drivers. It's like every week it's like, well, now these 3 games work better, look great. How about these other 10,000? So
Yep.
Yeah, it's like the I mean, of course they're building the train or building the train tracks while the train is on it, because it's just like they just put out the first one. How long has it been? It hasn't even been 6 months since the first MSI Claw.
It's been like 8 or 9, but still. Yeah,
it's 8 or 9. Yeah, it hasn't even
still
been
this year. Yeah.
Yeah, that's crazy that they're doing it that fast, and that they're turning it around that fast is really surprising to me.
Yeah,
Go ahead.
No, you can finish your thought.
I was just going to say the big question I had for them too is like, okay, great, Gen 2. Is there going to be a Gen 3? Like, I wanted them to commit to saying that they're in it for the long haul, and they said yes, but you never know, right? Things always change, but they at least were like, yes, this is a product line, like our laptops, like our desktops, or whatever else they make. So
Yeah, I was really happy with that when we had that discussion with them the night before. Because even when you look like Lenovo, when they're coming out with this new set, and you feel like Asus is going to make a new set. So we at least have the 3 big manufacturers that are putting solid time into this, and they are, at least insofar as bolstering their gaming brand that they like. Asus has ROG, and MSI has, what does MSI call their gaming thing?
Claw? I don't
MSI
know.
Gaming. That's all it is.
Yeah,
There's
that's it.
MSI.
MSI Gaming. Yeah, that's what
And
I
then
was gonna say.
Lenovo has Legion, right? So
Yeah, right.
they have the Legion. So they're all like bolstering their gaming subset category type of stuff, which makes sense. And I'm just glad that they're doing it, and seeing where this eventually leads. The weird thing for me about the Claw 8 is that Lunar Lake has been out for a few months now. I had reviewed the Asus laptop, and it was good then, and there was an Intel rep that was in the event meeting that we got to talk with as well, and they do have a supposedly a significant driver patch coming in this month, which is why it's coming down to the wire, because it's launching on like the 26th, and we don't even know when we're even getting review units. It's like kind of up in the air. Like when they said there's like, well, we'll try to get it to you before CES, and we're like, that's like a week after it launches.
Right.
All right. So it remains to be seen where that all lands out. As the problem with Intel is that they are in third place. You have the Battle Mage GPU that just came out, which is a discrete GPU for desktops and stuff, and everyone is raving about that. You look at all like the tech reviewers and stuff; they're all going nuts about it, saying it's a great budget GPU because it's like $250, and it's a bit better than the 4060 in a lot of games, except Unreal Engine 5 games. It just gets demolished in. So it's like all of these things where you like all the stuff that we saw and all the data that they provided to us is showing off old data that doesn't apply to new games, and this is where you're going to start seeing where the Claw 8 is going to be a bit weak. The one thing I told the Intel rep is that they really have to take this Claw 8 and seed it out to game devs, because I told the Intel guy there, I was like, look, when they're making PC games, they're like, we have to make sure that this works great on NVIDIA stuff. And then someone's like, what about AMD? And they're like, oh yeah, and AMD. And then some guy's like, well, what about Intel? And he's like, Intel what? Like there's no one doing anything, because Starfield launched and it was broken day one. Like, could you imagine if someone's going to have the Claw 8 and some game is going to come out day one and they get a black screen? That's going to be really sour. The one thing that I mentioned in my quick impressions video for the MSI Claw, the one benefit that they have, now you can do this on the Ally and the Ally X, but you have to hack the drivers, right? You have to disable signed drivers so that you can get the latest Radeon driver set. If you want the official ones, you have to wait until Asus or Lenovo, whoever, give you the Z1E driver from the company. Whereas the Intel 258V, the Lunar Lake model, that just uses standard Intel drivers. So when Intel comes out with a new driver, you just download it and install it, which is a benefit over the Ally, right? Like you don't have to wait for them. But in the same token, they're third place drivers. So if they didn't have that, that would be even more brutal. Like if you had to wait for MSI to give you a driver update, like this game's been broken for months, guys. Can you please just update this? If you knew that, then that's going to be a big, big problem. So performance-wise, where it is, it's very, very competitive compared to the Ally X. Price-wise, it's on the high end of things. So especially when we start looking at Z2 and all those other ones, which may be Strix Point. We'll see where the price point lands for those. They may be just as expensive as Lunar Lake. On the flip side, this is like one of the cheapest Lunar Lake things you can buy. Most Lunar Lake laptops are like 1100, 1200. So this is 32 gigs for 900. So if you look at it through that angle, it's actually very aggressively priced. So it's very interesting. For me, I feel like this is actually not a second gen. This is actually their first attempt at a handheld. And the previous one was actually just like, hey guys, we're just kidding. That wasn't anything. Whoopsie doodle.
That's my big thing, is that I feel like, that's it, right? Like, it feels like the first one just should not have happened.
Right.
And this is the right one. And I just wish they had gone that route from the beginning.
Right.
Yeah, I kept comparing it.
Good.
I kept comparing it to the original iPhone. I'm like, because that one, the iPhone 3G came out really quick after the first iPhone, right? But we wouldn't have had the 3G without that iPhone first. And so I feel bad for anyone who bought that first one, but we kind of knew that was a first gen device with the old iPhone. Same thing with the MSI Claw. And so I don't see it as being like it's more like a 1.3 as version, like versus a Gen 2,
Right. Yeah, exactly right. Yeah. I mean, if you bought a first gen iPhone and didn't use it, you would have been able to sell it for like $15,000 not too long ago. So
that's insane.
Just don't use it.
Right.
Don't use it.
Well, we can do that with our MSI Claws in 15 years.
Well, good news, because I'm probably not going to use one. All right, let's move on to our next award category, and this one is for best retro hardware. So, like, we have been inundated this year with so much retro hardware. Just a billion different things. My office is littered with them, and I'm not Russ. But I'm going to make Russ wait for the end, because I think most people are probably really curious what Russ is nominating. I'm going to have Carrie start us off. Carrie, what's your favorite retro hardware?
This year, 100%. Easy peasy, the RG35 XDX SP. That is my favorite retro handheld. In terms of like price, how it feels, what it does, I love the GBA SP, so I'm super biased in that, and I will own that my bias is clearly shown for the GBA SP. I loved that handheld. I carried it around with me everywhere, and the RG35 XDX SP is a bit bigger than that, but it still has all the same feel to it, especially when you have like the little overlay mask where they put the little border on the bottom. It just feels really good, and how they put the mask over the LCD stuff, so it just feels like a GBA SP in a lot of ways, like a super GBA SP. So that one's my favorite retro handheld for this year.
Were you putting a D in there? Is there a D in there?
I believe so. The last time I talked about it's 2 X's, right?
Yeah.
It's an inside joke. Whenever my buddies and I would play Mega Man, it'd be like in the year 20 XDX.
Oh yeah. Gotcha.
Yeah.
Yes.
That's XDX. Yeah.
Nice.
I say double X, and people yell at me for saying double X, but saying XX feels really weird. Like, it feels like I'm tripping over my words when I say XX. So I continue to say double X, but then we got XDX.
Well, you say it like it's like 20,
get the
right?
joke.
Like 20 or 70, like XDX.
Oh,
yeah.
Okay, I understand now.
Yeah.
I still hate it, but that's fine.
In the year 20
Listen,
XDX.
this is Enrinic's fault, right? Like RG35XXSP.
I
Like
know.
Yes.
Yeah, 100%. For what it's worth,
to-
they tried really hard. They had like a little graphic that they displayed a long time ago, and they were like, this is our naming scheme, right? If you see a 4 here, it means it's a 4-inch screen. If you see 3.7, it means 3.7. Then if you see an M here, it means whatever. Goodness gracious.
Wow. Oh, I thought somebody was at my house.
Yes.
Let me turn off that. But yeah, so they had a whole thing, and I feel like XDX was a placeholder that they were supposed to come out with something to like designate what that was, and someone was just like, XX, ship it out. It's like, no.
I do that all the time. I use this a program called Notion to make all of my where I do all of my scripts and stuff. And if I usually will have like a naming convention for when I'm writing a script. It'll be like NN for NerdNest. If it's on my Bill Fairchild channel, it's BF for that channel, and then it's the year. and then it's the episode number, like how many videos I do. And if I don't know when something, like I'm working on something, but I don't know when it's going to come out, I don't know what the number is. So I always put XDX in there as like a placeholder until I go back and I'm like, oh, this is episode 52 or something like that.
I always do that with, I type in ASDF, I just go, I roll my fingers across the keyboard, So I just imagine, someday Ambernex's going to release an ASDF handheld.
You'll be like, I already got my script done. Perfect. Okay, so I talked to Rich ahead of time, and he said I didn't play any retro stuff. That's not his jam. So he's off the hook for nominating one. So I'm going to nominate one. And right here on my desk is the one that I was going to nominate. It's the same exact one that Carrie just nominated. So I got to pick something else. And I want to pick something that nobody else is going to pick. So I'm going to go with this. This has actually been the one that I've been using non-stop, and it is the Ioneo Pocket DMG. This thing is overkill for what I use it for, but the form factor is great. The screen is beautiful. It's got this awesome high-resolution OLED display in this thing. It's just absolutely fantastic, and I adore this device, even though it has some things about it that I don't like if you're going to have a joystick down here and then a touchpad, just put another joystick there. That would have been a much better solution. Or what I was hoping for when I originally saw this thing was that this was a module that you could take out and get rid of the joysticks if you didn't want them. But this thing is very expensive, and most people are not going to be interested in this device. But it's like the Cadillac of retro handhelds, so that's my nomination.
I haven't tried it, but that Cadillac appeals to me more than like the analog Cadillac, right? Like the idea of like FPGA is great, but like also just this is the luxury item. It's expensive, but also it's still just 4 colors, right? So like that didn't excite me much, but the DMG being something more capable, robust, I feel like is more attractive to me.
That makes sense.
I mean, I will say for that DMG as well, it feels like, so when I was really into like food and all that kind of stuff, you always wanted to go to the restaurant that the chefs went to after their shift. Like that was the best restaurant to go to, And I feel like the DMG is the handheld that everyone, like the people that are at that higher, like the influencer tier or something like that, that's their handheld, Part of that, and full disclosure, is that many of us got them for free. So it's like we didn't pay the $700 to get it. So there's a full on like that element there, right? But I actually just traded mine. So I'm shipping it off today to Stubbs, who Retro Handhelds, because he got the white model and I want that one instead. And so we're doing a swap, and mine's a downgrade. I'm getting like the 256 gig version instead of the 1 terabyte version. But I want that color because I want that black bezel. And so I'm actually, really looking forward to that.
Nice. So what's your nomination for your favorite retro hardware for the year?
It was going to be the SP, and I'm glad you had me go last. So I'm going to change it so that just for, everyone have different things in the category. So the Retroid Pocket 5 is my other like super easy to recommend handheld because it's around, $220 before shipping. But it's just like the best all around handheld that we have seen, I would say, ever at this point. You know what I mean? At that price point, what you're getting in terms of an OLED display, really good ergonomics, really nice, sleek design, mature software. They really do build a good Android. And just in general, it's got a Snapdragon 865, which is not the newest chip, but it's perfectly capable up to PS2, and it supports dual boot into Linux, so you can just load up Rocknix or another Linux operating system to be able to just bypass Android and have the most powerful Linux-based handheld that's not an x86 handheld. And so I think the Retroid Pocket 5 is just so easy to recommend if you want to go with that higher tier. The SP is easier to recommend because it's, a third of the price, but the Retroid Pocket 5 is really special.
And that's a widescreen device too, right?
Right. And so like really good for like, it's like the ultimate PSP machine, that kind of thing. It's not the best streaming handheld because both analog sticks are at the bottom. So it's just not like not the best ergonomics to hold in your hand.
That's one thing that kills me. I wish that they would just be like, we make handhelds for AYN as well, right? But that the AYN one has the analog sticks in the Xbox format, and we do PlayStation format. That's what we do. And like, come on, guys, can you just? I would like to get the $200 one that would be good for streaming and.
Right.
Yeah, they do for what it's worth. You know, the funny thing is like when you like look at like the Android build of like who makes it for AYN and Retroid Pocket, same person, same person,
right?
So
Same
it's
contract.
like so it's like guys, come on. Anyway, they to your point, Russ, and I haven't used a Retroid Pocket 5. Their builds of Android are a level above whatever anyone else does, and you can feel the care and craft that went into it, and the difference of the knowledge of how they handle Android. It is on another level.
You know, the DMG is a great example because that is like one Android build that just gets in your face when you don't want it. You know, like, get out of here. You know, it's like in Nacho Libre where the guy comes up with a corn and he goes, get that corn out of my face. And he like pushes it down and it falls on the ground. Like, that's how I feel about the Android build. Like, it's always in my face and I don't like it. So,
right.
Anyway.
That's funny.
Yeah.
So this year really was an embarrassment of riches, right, for retro hardware? Because didn't the Odin 2 come out this year too? Was that this year?
No, that was last year.
That was last year.
That was
Okay.
late last year.
The
They did a
Portal is not
mini
available
version.
yet, right?
Oh, it's in up? There's another upcoming Odin. Is that what it is? A Portal?
Yeah, so they released a mini version,
Right.
looks like a Vita, and then I wasn't a huge fan of that one because it gets really hot. And then they have the Portal, which I got my hands on, but it won't ship until next month.
Got it. Amazing.
So real quick, you guys mentioned the word portal, and it made me think of the PlayStation Portal. And I almost want to just put, because we have the ROG Ally X in Best Modern Hardware twice. I almost just want to put the PS Portal in there just to piss Carrie off.
It wasn't this year. That was the only thing. I would have.
Oh, it was last year?
Yeah.
Yeah, it is last year.
Okay.
But yeah, it's from that
All
South
right.
Park episode. Like, I'm gonna stick my
win.
thumb up his butt just to piss this thing off.
Is that all?
Oh, and there's the intro. All right, let's move on to Valve is apparently releasing a new console. Oh, man, there's been so much news. There's been so much news lately, but sadly, it's Bradley he had done some data mining and he had found information about an upcoming device that a lot of us are assuming is a set-top box from Valve, kind of like an Xbox, kind of like a PlayStation, or you could just say it's a PC that runs SteamOS. And this thing is called codename Fremont, to go with the Ibex controller that we covered last episode. Go back and check out that episode if you've missed it. And the thing that makes this likely to be a set-top box is that it uses HDMI Type A as the big full-fat HDMI
Right.
port. And that's not going to be on a handheld. So let's talk about that real quick. Carrie, what do you think, man?
Yeah, so this is more kind of the same thing that we've always been discussing in previous years about, what we would think about them doing a set-top box, and specifically even for their head-mount display, their HMD for Deckard, right?
Yeah.
So the idea has always been, especially because we saw like ARM in the mix and all the other stuff, and it really became, okay, they want a fully contained HMD. And would they put AMD in there? It's going to chew through a lot of power. You can do ARM, but ARM isn't necessarily superior in any you can't just expect putting 2 watts on ARM and be like, oh, it's going to just perform just as good as a Steam Deck. It doesn't work like that. So what ARM does do well is power gate off a lot of its chips and standby really well. So if you wanted to have a device that's just going to be sitting around not getting juice all the time, and it would be streaming from this Fremont console, but you could almost see the same type of conversation that we were always talking about, where we were kind of saying it was going to be sold together, right? Like you'd have this console with a HMD, but now you also have the Steam controller too that is there as well. And you can kind of, if you just like take a step back, you see 3 parts that are together, but also 3 parts that are separate. And no one needs to buy all 3, and people can do 2, people do 1.
Just to make sure everybody's on the same page with Carrie, HMD is head-mounted display.
Yeah.
Go ahead.
So you get this really cohesive look at what they're developing, and it's it's not. It's just a smorgasbord, and people can pick and choose what they want out of it, and every part of it complements whatever anyone wants out of it. There's going to be some people that legitimately will only buy a Steam controller too. There's going to be some people that just buy the console, and there's going to be some people that just buy the head-mounted display, because likely it's going to work with other desktops and how that all does it, right? So it's whatever anyone wants, or they can get the whole kit and caboodle type of thing, because all of these will interlock as a baseline functionality set. So it makes a lot of sense. And who knows, right? Like, maybe this is different. Maybe the HMD does have full fat new type of Steam Deck hardware in there and very limited battery life, or a tether to a battery pack, right? Because you don't want a heavy battery in there, so you'd have to tether a battery somewhere else. Because that's really what it all comes down to, is those lightweight pancake lenses. How many of you guys have a Quest 3?
My son does, but I don't.
Have you seen the Quest 3? Like,
Yeah.
actually worn it?
A couple times. Russ actually has, though.
Right,
Yeah,
the pancake lenses really do make a giant difference over the Fresnel lenses that are thicker, because especially along the edges it really becomes really distorted. The pancake lenses really do a better job. So that's what we're looking at when we take a look at the performance. Sadly, it's Bradley also talked about saying that the AMD Lilac is kind of a regular name. And when you actually take a look at it, if you take a look at Strix Point Halo, which just was talked about and it had leaks, it also has like a default AMD name. I forget what it was, but it's like it's not an AMD Lilac, but it's AMD blank, and it just kind of means like nothing. So when you take a look at it, what's interesting is that AMD Lilac in their OpenCL score, it's the exact same score as Halo Strix Point. So that's interesting, but who knows? There's some baseline configuration for what you're looking at, essentially, regardless of compute cores and all the other stuff. And the thing that I've been harping on a bunch is that 256-bit wide, or basically 220 gigabytes a second of bandwidth to feed RDNA 2, RDNA 3 type of hardware results in this score, regardless of whatever you do with it, really, right? So it's that's basically what we're looking at.
Rich, what's your reaction here? Do you think this is a done deal?
Well, it's Valve, right? So hard to say done deal. I mean, I think they're very committed to this project, which I do think is a like set-top box of some sort. But the thing is, they're also committed to Deckard. They're also committed to HLX or Half-Life X. They're also committed to VACnet and SteamOS for all. So I don't know where this lands in their priorities. I feel like what they want to do is have one big launch of this.
Yes.
So Carrie referred to it. I forget what word you used. I've been using ecosystem. Brad had a tweet recently where he said like Steam Deck or Steam Family, right?
Right.
It's like this family of systems that Valve is building together, and I think HLX will be a part of that, right? Like I think it will be a launch title. Maybe it'll be like a hybrid VR, non-VR game. That's going out there, right? Like now I'm just speculating, but I'm just saying I think that they want to build up to a big launch. That's what I feel like they're working towards. Holiday 25 seems tight. I would love for it to be Holiday 25, but it's starting to feel tight now with how far out like IBEX is and things like that. But I would love to see this big launch for Holiday 25.
Russ, you think we see it next year, or do you think it's going to be longer than that?
I'm concerned about the launch of an ecosystem like this. Like, I feel like there's so many moving parts with all the different components, and what if one of them gets hung up, that things are going to get delayed for all of it, you know? But this would be, I mean, let's be honest, like if they tie this in with the next Steam Deck, and this is all just one big launch, right? You're like handheld, desktop, VR, like all of it, none of it, whatever you want, you know, like that would be really amazing, right? And it would be very consumer friendly. But man, yeah, next year already, that'd be crazy. We'll see.
So that also, this is again the Xbox handheld, right? It doesn't matter what it is. The idea of what the Xbox handheld could possibly do. Hopefully next month, late next month, they should have Strix Point Halo in, and I'm very, very interested in this. And every time I mention this, people always are like, you know, that's a 60-watt part, right? And I'm like, yeah, I'm going to make it run at 20 watts. Like, that's what I'm going to do. And they're like, no, it's not. And I'm confident of it. I could be completely wrong here, but we can force things, right? We can make it go as slow as it go. And if we can make it go as slow as it go, how much power is it going to take? Maybe 20 watts, maybe 25 watts, but it's going to be significantly less than its standard wattage. And when you think about remove Xbox handheld out of there, the same principle of it, where you have a handheld that is running 720p, whatever you need, but then when you dock it, it could match whatever Fremont was, right? You can just push more power into it and then upclock everything. Then you also have a fourth component in there for people that don't want a Steam Deck 2, but Steam Deck 2 and Fremont essentially line up in the docked category of power profiles. You know what I mean? Then you have a concept also for Fremont, because it doesn't have a screen, a bunch of other stuff, you can get it be cheaper. So it would be a cheaper console, or you can get a bit more expensive handheld that runs in a handheld state but docks up to Fremont, and then you have the HMD and you have Steam Controller 2. So, but when you look at that, they're waiting for the next generation of A and B stuff, which is, if RDNA 4 is that, who knows? We're going to find out around January when those GPUs start coming out, so we'll have a better idea of what that looks like. But that is also like a compelling thing to me. Steam Family, I said smorgasbord, doesn't matter. Steam Family sounds nicer and something people actually would understand. Yeah, so that is compelling to me, and it's same basic principle, right? Like Xbox handheld is Series S games in a handheld and Series S games when docked. And Steam Deck 2 is Steam Deck games in a handheld and Fremont in a dock. And same basic idea. This is totally possible. I'm very confident of it, but we'll wait and see what happens.
One thing I should mention, because this came up, so this news item was from last week. It was, Bill, you were talking about bringing stuff over from last week. This from last week, but something that developed since last week is Brad tweeted out just a list of strings. Like sometimes we find these strings in the code, and one of them is, we're aware of like deck verified compatibility section title, right? And this says Steam Deck compatibility, but under that generic device compatibility section title, and it's just the value for that string is device compatibility. I'll share that with you, Bill. But the point is they look to have some sort of new device compatibility section that they're going to have like in the store or something like that is similar to the deck verified system but more generic.
Right.
Yeah, probably like doesn't mention that, putting up because like one of the things to get deck verified is you got to be able to easily input text or whatever, and so they got to make sure that they don't mention the touch screen or anything like that kind of thing. Yeah, that makes a lot of sense.
What's always interesting to me is that the 1 foot experience is the same as the 10 foot experience. So for you guys that may not know, is like desktop is typically like the 2 foot experience, and like the phone is like a 1 foot experience, and TV's living room are 10 foot experience, right? And whenever you look at like GBA games, right, you'd always see that text is like super large on that screen, but you could also then play it 10 feet away and still have a readable like font. And it's funny to me that 1 foot and 10 foot are basically synonymous with each other. Like you could just be like, no, scale it exactly the same. Based on where they're going to be sitting, it's going to be readable there, it's going to be readable here. And only on desktop in the 2 foot experience does all of that get thrown out the window. And it's like, I played Baldur's Gate 3 when it was still in early access, and they had no concept of handhelds, so the text was like uber tiny, and I was like, oh, what is that? I'm looking at a 6-inch screen.
All right, let's move on to our next award, and that is going to be the biggest surprise of the year. This is a category, for some of these categories, I have to do a little bit of explanation. This is something where we picked up, and when we played it, we were like, okay, this is way better than I thought it was going to be. I love this game, and I didn't expect to love this game this much. And so... Rich, since you skipped out on the last category, I'll let you start us off. What's your biggest surprise of the year?
Okay, so here's the thing. I have several. I don't think they're going to conflict with anyone, but I was thinking I'd go last on this just in case, because I want to talk through the other things.
We'll let you go last.
Yeah, all right, cool. Great.
All right, Russ.
Yeah. So I don't think mine's going to garner good votes just because it's really, really personal for me. But and it was hard too because a lot of my things that I would put in this category were not 2024 games. They were like 2023 games or like Ghost of Tsushima is like a 2020 game that like I was like, oh, this is actually amazing, right? But that I don't think it fits in this category. So for me, what I picked is actually Parking Garage Rally Circuit, which I've tried to sell you guys on. I think
bought it
multiple times. Great. Gotcha. So the surprise for me on this one was that I think I really have a hard time figuring this out, but I think this was sent to me as a free code. I'm not really sure. And maybe if someone watched one of the older episodes, I probably disclaimed it if it happened or disclosed it if it happened. But anyway, I can't find it in my purchased library. So that makes me think that it's something that I was gifted, you know. Zero expectations for this game, but man, I love it so much. Like it's hard. Like I'm actually stuck in the game. Like I can't get any further in the progress of the career mode or whatever. But man, I just love it. It's like fun. It's got like a ska soundtrack sometimes will pop in, and I'm just like, what are these horns doing here? You know? But it feels like Sega Rally Championship in a garage, and so really pick up and play. Great with handhelds, but it looks good on TVs too. And so that's my biggest surprise. Where it's like I don't even know how I got this game. It's in my library, and it's just like become one of my most played games this year.
I'd also recommend following the creator of that game, like on whatever platforms he's on. I don't know if he still does it, but I've seen a couple videos of him where he just highlights like speed runners going through the game. And I don't know, it's always so delightful of just him like reacting to how people are doing it. And nice. Just like, yeah, all the different techniques that you can do in this little game. I still haven't played it. I did buy it as well, so I'm in the same boat. I hope to be delighted over the holiday break by that game.
I think Rich and I both bought it while we were recording. I think I remember that.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's got a Mario Kart feel to it, you know, because there's just one button. It's your X button is drift, and you got your gas, and that's all you're ever going to need. And it's just so simple. I love that.
Gary, what's your pick for biggest surprise of the year?
So my big surprise of the year is 100%. Now I was cautiously optimistic about it, but what I came away with not realizing how awesome it was with is Indiana Jones and the Great Circle. I am absolutely Troy Baker. I genuinely thought that they were using AI voice of Harrison Ford, and it was not just his delivery. And apparently, no, it's just his delivery. And he nails Harrison Ford amazing. Like, unreal good. And I was worried about, like, fisticuffs, like punching and stuff in a first-person game. And I was like, how's that going to work? When you kind of waffle back and forth because a lot of people are like, oh, the AI is dumb as rocks. And it is, but it's also a very Indiana Jones movie for like Indiana Jones to like come right behind someone, just like sock him in the face.
Well, they're fascists. Fascists are idiots, so it's
I've been calling it bonking. You know, you bonk the guy on the head, basically.
But it is so, like, the sound effects are same from the movie, and it's so satisfying when you punch them. Like, it feels good to do it, and it's like, oh man, that was great. And you like literally deck someone, and the guy in front of you doesn't hear it, and it's like, yeah, I'm Indiana Jones. Of course you didn't hear that.
Right?
Only I heard
wind
that.
up too, and it's like,
and you know, it's I'm going through all the side quest stuff and just enjoying it, and it's like the side quest stuff feels so intertwined with the main quest stuff. But the reason why it's my biggest surprise is, you know, licensed games are always like, oh, you know, it's a licensed game, there's familiarity to it. This is the first licensed game that I've ever played that has melded the license between a game experience. Like, this is how I imagined Indiana Jones should be in a video game. How good this, they nailed it. And then the one thing that I also didn't expect, and I said this, and some people are like, oh, it's more like Dishonored. And I totally get that. But because of the punching and like the kind of low-key, like very low-grade stealth mechanics of it, and how you're kind of moving around, it feels like almost a modern adventure game. Like old point-and-click adventure game, where you're just kind of like reading stuff and looking for clues. There was one thing that I said in the Discord. I was like, oh, I have to match up stars somewhere. So I'm like looking up at the ceilings and all around, and I was spent like 20 minutes on it. And then I like looked down, and it was a drawer, and I just pulled the drawer out, and I was like, oh, that's all right. That's the safe code.
That's very Indiana Jones too.
yeah. So
Go ahead.
it's I am absolutely loving the game. It's been a game that has, there's those games that like it just sits in the back of your head where you're doing something else and you're like, I can't wait to get back to that game type of game. And it being a licensed Indiana Jones game and feeling just like Indiana Jones, it's a shame that this came out in December and not like early November to be included in like the Game of the Year awards, because it definitely deserves to be included in there.
Well, I mean,
So let me. Oh,
he should do it in January then, so that
right.
what were you going to say, Russ?
I was just going to jump in and say, so one thing is I initially thought, okay, yeah, this kind of feels like Dishonored, but I only play like 2 hours of that game. And I was like, and I even thought, like, there was a point where I was thinking erroneously that it's actually the same developer, but I looked it up and it's not. It's actually veteran devs from Starbreeze Studios. Those are the guys that made the old Riddick game on Xbox, and they made the Darkness on Xbox 360. Once I figured that out, when you like duck down to go into stealth mode and you get a vignetting around, exactly like it happened in Darkness and in Riddick. And so I'm like, holy crap, this is that game. Like I once I made that association, everything started clicking. And I've got no patience for the stealth stuff. I've never really liked that. But it's very Indiana Jones of me to just stand up and start punching people and just be like, I'm going to get through this. I lost patience. You know what I mean? Because that's what Indiana Jones would do too. And so I don't feel bad that I'm breaking the game by turning on easy mode and then just punching a bunch of guys to get through the next section. So I've had a lot of fun with it too. But yeah, I am totally playing on my own terms.
That happened a lot in the Wolfenstein games too.
Which is same developers. Yeah.
The same developers, exactly.
Machine
where
Gun
like
Games.
Yeah, they had like these stealth portions, but they were very non-mandatory, right? Like you could do, and for most people it was like you started out stealth, but you ended up just mowing people down by the end of the scene.
The one thing that I do like a lot is because like you have the revolver starting off and you only have like 6 bullets. I was like, oh, okay, I need to save this for like. I was holding the revolver, waiting for someone to like start like whipping around a sword like crazy, and like, oh, I know what I need to do here. That's what I'm waiting for the gun. But when you are in the Vatican level, which is like really just the first level, right? When you get to the Vatican level and you put on the disguise of the clergy, you can no longer use the gun, and you only have a cane that you have. So that gun becomes no longer usable, or at least I didn't see it. But I like that element where the disguise that you're putting on, you still have your whip, which is kind of like whatever, Oh, that's the other thing that I don't see anyone really talking about. I use the whip all the time in fisticuffs. Like if they have like a thing, I'm just like
stun.
Yeah, you can also whip the
you can pull
weapon.
them too.
Yeah, you can whip the weapon right out of their hand. It's a bunch of stuff you do with the whip, and I'm just really. Like if you go against the guy that also has an actual gun and is firing at you, you can just whip the gun out of their hand instead of needing to fire back. It's so good. Definitely my big surprise of the year.
I've still never used the gun.
I have a question for both of you guys because you guys have been playing it. Russ, you called it bonking the guys. What was your favorite thing that you used to bonk somebody with? So for me, it was there was like a mandolin that I had found on the ground, and I picked that up. And then I had to set it down for something, and I ended up picking up a bottle, and I walked down the hall, and then I was like, hold on a sec. I got to go back and get that mandolin because I want to bonk somebody on the head with the mandolin. So, Russ, what's your favorite thing that you brained somebody with?
I just prioritize whichever one has the most stamina because they'll break after a few bonks, and so I always pick the one that's got the biggest. Like the wrench feels really satisfying, but I've gone through so many shovels. Like any shovel, I just like they're just littered broken shovels anywhere I go, basically, which is pretty funny. Yeah.
Gary?
Yeah, I probably just use whatever's around me, but I just found out today that if you get the feather duster, you get an achievement for bonking someone with a feather duster. So now I'm like going to be looking for just really random stuff because I try not to get into encounters, right? I try to be like Uber, like Indiana Jones, like just do the clues stuff in the background. But you don't really get penalized all that much unless you're in like the big crowded area, right? Like in the main area. Then they just start coming out of the woodwork, and I get to almost the end, but then they start getting guns and stuff. I'm like, oh, I'm outnumbered here. But yeah, so now I'm gonna start picking up some other stuff. But yeah, I think the funniest one that I had was probably the shovel, where you kind of like, or the broom, you like sweep under their legs and their like knees buckle out,
Oh,
and then they
nice.
turn around, and you like whack them. Yeah, it's such a fun game. They so
It really
nailed
is.
the entire thing that also, ray tracing is always enabled. Like global ray trace global illuminations is always on. And getting 30 FPS, like I had tweeted out about it. I like the guy was like, "You're looking in the sky," and I was like, this scene is still really heavy in this opening scene. Like all the foliage and all the other stuff, it just looks beautiful. And RTGI is enabled; it's always on. So it's really impressive for that it was able to run on the Ally X during like when my plane got delayed, and it was such a lifesaver because I put in quite a few hours during that time. But I haven't really been able to get to it yet. But I'm off call as of now, so I got time again.
So for me, my biggest surprise of the year is Animal Well. I had no expectations about this game at all. I knew somewhat that it was. I know that it's not made by Donkey. He's the guy that like bankrolled it or whatever, produced it. But I don't know who Donkey is. Like I don't pay attention to that stuff. So when like everybody was like, "Oh, this game from Donkey is going to be garbage or whatever," I was like, "I don't know anything about him, so maybe it'll be garbage, maybe it'll be great." But then I picked it up, and man, I love that game so much. It is one of the first games. Every time I get a new device, it's one of the first games I install. Number one, it takes no time to install because it's like a megabyte. And number two, it's just always fun to go back in and just kind of hop around and look at stuff. I just love the world. So for me, it's Animal Well. Rich,
Fair choice.
It's on you,
yeah.
man.
I like Animal Wall. That's a good one. Okay, so I'm going to give two runners up, and then I'll give my actual vote. So the first runner up is not a game; it's Bazite. Bazite surprised me this year. I had heard quite a bit about it. The first video I remember seeing was from High Tech Low Life, and it was a good video that introduced, how Bazite works on the Steam Deck, right? So replacing SteamOS with Bazite. But I'm someone that generally tends to wait a little bit until things have cooked a bit before trying it myself. And then I abandoned that altogether and tried it with the LIX where it was not ready at all. But, I got to speak with the developers and give them, what was working, what wasn't working. But in the end, it really made a Windows handheld, turned it into a non-Windows handheld, but turned it into kind of a Steam Deck, right? And made it what I wanted it to be. Then I think that's awesome. So Bazite is up there. The next runner-up is one that I would not have said a week ago because it wasn't out yet. Marvel Rivals. Marvel Rivals is definitely a big surprise for me. First of all, it's just really like well handled in terms of the business stuff. I'm sure we'll uncover some possibly scummy things at some point. Who knows? But
They'll step on a rake without a doubt.
Without a doubt, right? But so far, you can earn cosmetics in game, although it seems like it takes a long time to do it. I don't care about cosmetics, but it's cool that you can earn them without having to pay for them. I think all of the things that you can buy are cosmetics so far. And the battle pass is indefinite, right? You don't have a limited amount of time to unlock the things. But more than that, it's just a really good Overwatch. I know it's mostly just, very similar game, but with their own designs. And it's really fun to see how they incorporated those designs, right? Like what was the interpretation of each of those characters? Like Magneto. Thinking of Magneto as a tank, I would not really have thought about that. I would have thought more like how Iron Man plays, right? Like he's in the sky, kind of controlling, but he's a tank. So it's just fun to see that weird interpretation, and I've just been addicted since it came out. So it's a really good game.
I have been playing it a bunch, and my son and I almost every day we play. Not necessarily together because he's playing with his friends, and some of his friends are my students. So he and I aren't, but we are always talking about it.
Yeah.
And we'll be like, "Oh, have you tried this character?"
Yeah.
And like yesterday, I was like, "Have you tried Groot? Groot's my new favorite. I love Groot." And then he's like, "I've been using this other character. I can't remember who it is now, but It's a really good game, and my first impressions were, I don't like it. But then I played it some more, and because my son said to me, he goes, "Are you sure it's not because you just don't know it?" And I was like, "Yeah, that's probably what it is." So I gave it another shot, and it's the game that I sit down and play the most right now. Even though Indiana Jones is sitting there waiting for me, Indiana Jones, I have to pay attention to. I want to know what is happening with the story. With Marvel Rivals, I can just shut my brain off and play.
That's funny.
It does look amazing, and there's a lot of stuff in my timeline that will show up where just like funny little comics where it essentially boils down to, poor baby Overwatch is now neglected and everyone's moving over to Rivals. It does look cool. I've seen some like really good people playing it. I don't know which kind of class I would go. I wasn't super into Overwatch. Like I started playing it, but it's a game it's like one of those games where there's so much to it, and everyone is like a support role, a specific role that you need to like balance out your team.
Yeah.
But you need to be aware of that. So there's like at least 10 hours of gameplay for you to just come to grips with like understanding that whole meta, and then what class you actually prefer to play as and are good at. So it's like all of this like built-in time investment where you're, it takes me, a few days to put 10 hours of stuff, and that's me dedicating time to
For
it.
sure.
So that's always a put off for me, is like I have this, if I can't bring my A game to it type of thing, that I start losing it. And then it just becomes this, almost like, if you have a fight with someone and you don't say sorry, and the longer you don't say sorry, the worse it gets.
Yeah.
It's just
exactly that. Yeah.
So it's like, that's how I feel. It's like, man, I gotta play Rivals, because if I just keep on waiting, I'm never going to play it, because I'm like, well, the ship has sailed, it's gone. Yeah. There's no more returning for me. But
you want to get
Rivals
in now while everybody is in the same place as you and doesn't understand
same headspace.
anything.
Exactly. Yeah.
Rich, what's your actual pick?
Okay. Well, it's Balatro. I played Balatro during the Next Fest before it came out, and I was like, "Oh, this is cool. I like this." But it wasn't like it sunk its hooks into me, and that's also why I play so many of like these smaller games, like Animal Well, right? Like that, where I don't know what I'm gonna get. It may be kind of run of the mill, or it may not be that great quality, but I have the opportunity to like, maybe it's going to be great. Maybe it will surprise me. And so like, I take those, like disappointments with the joy, right? Of the delight. And that's what Balatro gave me. Is I was like, oh yeah, no, this is amazing. I've never played anything like this, except Luck Be a Landlord, which is also great. But yeah, so it's Balatro for me.
If you don't know what Luck Be a Landlord is, go back and watch the first episode of the NerdNest podcast when Rich told us about that game. All right. We only have about 20 minutes left before we got to wrap up the show. So we got to start going just a little bit faster. So real quick, we all kind of watched the Game Awards last night. Can we all pick one thing that we came away from that we were like, okay, that looks really cool? And if you look in the show notes, guys, there's a Verge article that has like everything in there. Anybody want to jump off as just there's one thing that you thought, okay, I'm looking forward to this game?
Yeah, I can. Okay.
No, you go first.
All right. I really am looking forward to the Naughty Dog game. I even forgot what it's called at this point, but like I know a lot of people are like Intergalactic, right? Yeah. And so a lot of people are thinking, oh, it's like a return to like form and stuff like that. And I totally agree. I think that it's like a new Jak and Daxter. That's the way I'm looking at it, is like this is a action-oriented Jak and Daxter, got some exploration elements to it, and like the physics feel and all that kind of stuff of Uncharted and Last of Us. Like, I'm here for it. Like I'm very excited and interested about that one. It's got the same like 80s sci-fi aesthetic that we've seen all over the place. But I'm cool with that. Like 80s Trent Reznor soundtrack.
Exactly, dude. Retro sci-fi is my. I listen to a band called Gunship. They do 80s synth as if it never stopped, and that's exactly how I feel about this game, Intergalactic. That it, first off, they reference Akira and Cowboy Bebop as like things that they're going for. But imagine like if Japan never. Imagine that the 80s never ended and Japan never lost dominance, and now you're in space with all that stuff. and that, like, the feel of all that, and they really nailed it. I was going to pick Intergalactic, and I'll pick a different one because I can pick a different one, and I should pick a different one. But yeah, I'm feeling that game. But they said that they were still working on it since 2020. Last of Us took 3 years to make. Last of Us 2 took almost 6 years to make. They say it's like north of 5 years, and every other video game project has been ballooning out of whack. GTA 6 might get delayed. It might not even come out next year. It might go into 2026. So everyone's like making these plans of like if Naughty Dog's Intergalactic game is supposed to come out in 2026, which GTA 6 is now in 2026, everyone's going to avoid 2026. They're just like, that's a nuclear zone. We will sell nothing if GTA 6 comes out, so we will go around GTA 6 because you have to like go around the moat that thing creates. So that's what gets me worried, is like, I'm so hyped up for it, but there's a worry in my head that we don't see it until 2027 or 2028 just because of ballooning dev times and stuff. Or they just say, screw it, we're going to come out in 2026 and just come out at a different time that if GTA 6 doesn't get delayed. But in my bones, I feel like GTA 6 is going to get another delay just because it's, that's what they do.
You heard it here first. It's going to get delayed. Carrie, if you can't pick the Intergalactic, what's the one you want to pick?
Dispatch, I really liked how that looked. That was the game that was kind of like an adventure game where this guy is like dispatching other superheroes and stuff, and you had like you were trying to match up heroes for like a specific situation, and you saw their like you were trying to like line up what type of heroes you needed for a certain situation, and it showed their like attribute graphs in that hexagon pattern that I don't know what that's called, but it's like, you have like strength and speed and whatever, and it shows you which one. So you're like trying to match. It's almost like a weird puzzle game in that respect, that you're like, oh, I need to put this hero here and that hero there. And
that's the one with the talking dog that was like, hi, I'm a dog and I'm naked, and my wife and I laughed very loudly.
Yes. Okay. That was called Dispatch, and that's with Paul Aaron Paul. Aaron Paul. Aaron Paul is doing the voice work for that, and that looked really cool. Like, it was just, I dug that game a lot. And I like the direction of everything that they were doing in there. Intergalactic would be my first pick, but Dispatch I'm happy with choosing as well.
That's also the one where, I don't know if it was Aaron Paul or the person speaking to Aaron Paul's character, where they said, "You gonna eat those Twinks?" And I found that.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah,
right, And he was like,
they're not actually Well, no, it doesn't matter.
Just take it.
Yeah. That was funny.
What's yours, Rich?
So there was a bunch of stuff that I really enjoyed, but this is more sentimental. Hideki Kamiya, the guy behind Beautiful Joe, Okami, God Hand, Resident Evil 2, one of those, is back with Capcom. So he was with Capcom when he made those games. He branched off and created Clover as part of Capcom. He and others, right, like Shinji Mikami, Hideki Kamiya, and others created Clover inside of Capcom and made those games, Beautiful Joe, Okami, and whatnot. Then they left and created Platinum, one of my favorite game studios. Platinum has since sort of like dispersed, right? Shinji Mikami went on to work at Bethesda and whatever, and then now Kamiya's back at Capcom, and the studio is called Clover's Studio, so kind of like a sequel to Clover, and they're making Okami. Was that a sequel to Okami? Yeah, is it Okami 2?
It's hard to say. Like, there's not much in the trailer. It
says on the thing, Okami sequel.
Okay, so I Okami itself, like, cool. I'm excited about, but I'm just more excited about like this story arc. Just Kamiya being back with Capcom is just kind of there's a sentimentalness to that for me.
Russ, did I have you go? I've already forgotten.
Yeah, I went first.
Oh, okay.
Intergalactic.
Intergalactic.
That's right.
You guys know the song.
So I'm torn, and I'm glad that I was able to pick two, and nobody picked either of these. So I'm going to go with the one that I think, Mafia: The Old Country. That looks awesome. And I love the idea of these period pieces. Like, that's one of the things that I'm loving about Indiana Jones, is that it's, in the 30s. It takes place a long time ago, where you don't have cell phones and all that nonsense. And I just find that really, really oddly compelling. And I don't have a whole bunch of nostalgia for the Mafia series, but this game, like when I was watching it, I was just like, man, this looks really interesting, and I wanna find out about these characters and see what this story is. And I'm very much looking forward to that one. The other one that I was going to mention, if somebody stole that, was Split Fiction,
Yes.
which is
Heck yeah.
so weird.
I'm glad that you
They've
mentioned
got
that.
these two authors who write books. One of them writes fantasy, the other one writes sci-fi, and they get sucked into their own stories, and you ping pong back and forth between sci-fi and fantasy. It looks so cool.
Have you played any of the Team Hazelight's previous games?
Yes.
So It Takes
because
Two?
I think they all require
Co-op.
couch co-op, right? Yeah.
My son and I played through all of their stuff. So A Way Out, It Takes Two, they're fantastic.
Brothers.
Yeah, so my son is like, he's like, oh, when they come out with their next game, we should play it. So I was like, hey, bud, Hazelight made the next game. He's like, oh, what is it? So we saw Split Fiction. So I'm probably gonna get it day one. It's also nice that you can, the friend pass is free.
Yes.
So you buy the main game, and then if you want to play with someone online, they just download the friend pass, and then they can play with you. So they don't need to buy the game as well. It's really nice. But my son and I, we do full on couch co-op for that. So they're great game. Like you can kind of see the same type of stuff that they do, insofar as like they have these branching points that they go out and everyone does their own thing, and then they have these points where they kind of meet together and you're on the same screen, and then you split screen off again, and they pivot through a lot of different ideas that are similar through all those different games, but they, like Astrobot, have a theme that happens that changes every level. And like this Split Fiction thing is the same deal, but they do a really good job. And just for that alone, I would definitely say people should have this on their radars.
Mm-hmm.
All right, so for the rest of the show, it's just going to be no more news stories because we only got 20 minutes left. So let's go with I have regrets. This category is the category where you bought something and you kind of wish you hadn't. I'm going to go first on this one. And I'm kind of cheating because I didn't buy this game. It was given to me as a code from the developer, and it is Star Wars Battlefront Classic Collection. That is a dumpster fire. It is real bad, and oh my God, one of the worst experiences that I had all year. So if I had bought that, I would be even more upset than if I hadn't bought it. So, Carrie, what's a game that you bought that you're like, boy, this I wish I hadn't bought this?
I'm gonna have to bow out of your bill. I have no regrets.
No regrets.
No regrets.
Did I spell it wrong?
No
on the show
regrets. No, it's
No, you did
Malibu?
Yeah, some movie where the guy he has a tattoo that says no.
Oh,
no
with
reg-
Jason Sudeikis,
yeah,
right?
yeah. No regrets.
All right, so
Yeah.
Russ.
Yeah, I have two. The one's just like a thought. But like, I bought Hades 2 early access, and I regret it because I spent a day playing it, and it like wasn't finished. It was like the first day of it and stuff, and I was like, I can't do this. Like, I am ruining future Russ's experience with this game when it's ready. And so I like immediately uninstalled it and haven't touched it since. And so I regret doing that because I just want the real final Hades 2 experience. And so I feel like I spoiled myself so much with that. So that was a regret for me. I was like, I don't want to do that anymore. So I learned early access. I
just want to jump in. You said that on a previous episode that and I immediately stopped playing that game because I was like, you know what? Russ is right. I shouldn't play this right now. I need to wait. So anyway, go ahead.
But then the actual regret I have is just last week, and I let Twitter get the best of me. All the Assassin's Creed games were on sale. And so I asked Twitter, hey, which one should I buy? Like, I feel like I want to get back into Assassin's Creed. You know, I only played 1 and 2. So what should I do? And everybody told me every game, basically. They're like, oh, this one. Black Flag was like the number one that everyone kept saying. But like, otherwise, it was like all of them. And I was like, you know what? It's only $110 for all of them. And so I bought all of them. And it was the stupidest thing ever. Like, when am I going to find 600 hours of free time to play all of those games, right? Especially because like Origins and Odyssey are like designed to suck up time, right? And so I totally regret that. I did install Black Flag and I played about 10 minutes of it and I was like, oh, this is cool and stuff. But man, that was just so dumb. Like, why? Like, those Steam sales get you, and that one really got me, where I bought the whole pack. But
that is
anyway,
a good price.
no, it's fine.
100.
It is an excellent price for all the gaming that you're getting, but I can't play all that gaming. And so, yeah, but that's my big regret. It's like, why did I do that? I could have just got Black Flag for $8 or whatever and just played that.
Rich?
So we joked about this earlier with like Balatro stealing all my time. I will say the Marvel Rivals has I didn't pay for it, but Marvel Rivals also has that problem where I'm going to spend a lot of time on it, and I'm going to feel what Carrie was saying, where it's like, I don't want to take a day off because I don't want to like lose the skill that I've built up. So yeah, I'm probably a week away from regretting that, but I'm not there yet. So that's it for me.
All right, Marvel Rivals. I'll put it in the show notes. All right, moving on. Biggest miss. This is a game where you wish that you had played it this year. It came out this year, and you were looking at it, and you just never found the time to actually sit down and play it. Carrie, what do you think, man?
This one's easy for me. I played a tiny bit of it and then bounced off of it, and haven't come back to it, even though I liked it. And that, my friends, is Space Marines 2 Warhammer 40K. That game is legitimately great, and I only finished the tutorial section because it just gives you like how to play, and then you go into like the co-op section where you can play online with buddies and whatever, or play with your AI companions. And I had such a great time playing Space Marines 2, and in some ways it's almost like Space Marines 2 is still in early access as well, because there was a patch that just came in, and it's like, we have FSR 3.1 now, and I'm like, awesome. I'm glad that I didn't play it, but it's a game that I totally wish that I actually did play, because that's a game that is still firmly in the back of my head. I'm going to play Indiana Jones first to completion, and then that's going to be something that I want to return to.
Rich?
I think for me, I'm going to say I played a good bit of it, but I'm going to say The Lost Crown. It's a fairly long Prince of Persia: The Lost Crown, the Metroidvania that came out, I guess it was last year, but I really started playing it this year. But I just didn't get far enough, and I certainly haven't beaten it. So that's one I immediately want to return to, because it was on its way to being in my like game of the year's like top 3. And I've listed it as my top 3, but I probably have like 10 hours out of 40, 50 hours. So I'm going to list that as a big miss.
Fair enough. And Russ, what about you, man?
So I picked Black Myth Wukong because I feel like that is a game that will resonate with me, but I'm not spending full price on it, and so I've been waiting for sales, and so I kind of missed the opportunity because it just hasn't been cheap enough for my whatever threshold. And it's nothing to do with the value of the game, but just rather like, I know I've got such a backlog that it has to get cheap enough where I'm like, okay, I can justify it right now, even though I may not play it right now. Because it's got a lot of action oriented. It's kind of boss rushy. I kind of like all those elements, but it's, established in actual mythos. And so I love that idea of like it being somewhat historical or resonating with an entire culture, like that to me is also very attractive, as opposed to somebody just writing a story and like it being a story of its own. Like, I love the idea that there's some historical foundation in it. And so I do think I will like that game. I just didn't play it this year.
Yeah. So for me, it's I actually went with a game from last year, because like I looked at the games that came out and I felt like I played most of the stuff that I wanted to play, and there wasn't anything that I was looking at I was like, yeah, I really kind of let that game down. But last year I absolutely let down Final Fantasy 16. I played it for about 4 hours, and then I put it down because I got distracted by a shiny thing. And then every time I picked it up, I was like, I don't remember how to friggin' play. So I would put it back down. And I don't remember what the story is happening here. So I put it back down. And so it's that thing where it's always nagging at me like, you want to play this, but you got to start over. And you don't want to start over. And so it just sits there unplayed, even though I paid for it. And it looks cool. And like I have like some of my friends they're always telling me this is like one of the best games that I've ever played. I loved it so much. You got to play it, Bill. And it just sits there, even though I own it, unplayed for no good reason. So I know it came out last year, but that's the one that I think that for me right now, I regret the most. Next category, backlog banger. Something that you've had or that you didn't know about that came out a long time ago and you played for the first time this year and you were like, holy cow, this game is awesome. I'm going to start, and I'm not going to talk about it for long because I talked about it 3 or 4 episodes ago, and that is Donkey Kong for the Game Boy. I adore this game. It is so good. I'm probably on level 7 now. There's 9 worlds, and I'm on level 7, and I've been playing it on my Pocket DMG, and it's just such a great game to just sit down and chill to. Absolutely love it. Russ, what about you?
So I already spoiled it earlier in the show, Ghost of Tsushima. So like that, I started picking up maybe 2 weeks ago, and it is such a good, like, story-related, like, third-person, like, kind of game. Like, I love it. Like, I slogged through Horizon Forbidden West this year, and I finished the whole thing. And it's like, it was almost there, but just not, like, it was just janky enough where I didn't like it, you know, too many options or whatever. And then, yeah, and this one just hits for me. Like, everything about it. It's simple. The fights are quick and brutal. Like, you can go or not go wherever you want, you know, and it's just beautiful looking. And so it's what, 4 years, like the next iteration is coming out in, you know, just a few months or whatever. And so that's how far behind the curve I am. And I'm loving it. Like, it's so amazing, and it runs great on handheld PCs and stuff too. So yeah, that's definitely my backlog banger. I almost put Final Fantasy 16 on there because I've been playing that one as well, and I'm like, this is great, you know. But no, it was Ghost of Tsushima.
Have you tried the Kurosawa mode?
I didn't try it. I've just been playing it with Japanese voice track and English subtitles, so it's like halfway there. I love the coloring. Like, I love how everything looks. It's got a muted kind of look, and so I don't want to take that away.
Gary, what about you, man?
So the game that I came out in 2020, and that game is Inscription, which I only played this year, and that is a game that I thoroughly enjoyed. It's like I was like, you know what, let me play this. It came up on Game Pass, and I was like, I've been kind of beating around the bush. I've been looking at this, and it's kind of always getting around with me. Let me put into an hour into it and see what it's all about. And it has so much mystery and intrigue from the get-go, and it's almost, in a weird way, very Fractions-y in that way, where you're like, well, wait a minute, what's going on here? And then there's just more to it that peels away outside of it being a card game, and they keep on iterating on it throughout. And that is a game that is a backlog banger for me. 3 years old, and I never got to it, but I'm glad I did. And I completed the game, but never did the superset, like the New Game Plus. I'm sure that I could do it, but it's like this time investment that I cannot put into it.
Rich, bring us home, man.
I'm going to go. I didn't spend a lot of time with it this year, but I've been slowly making progress on just the Half-Life series. So that's something where I've just been rationing the series. But, you know, we may be getting close to HLX, so I'd like to finish that off. I think I'm towards the end of episode 1, if I recall correctly. So, yeah, I'll work on that. I'll finish episode 2. I'll get to Alex. I did buy Alex during the last Steam sale. Nice. So I have that now.
What VR headset do you have?
Right now, I just have the PSVR 2.
Oh, okay. Do you have the adapter for the
I
PSVR?
do.
Oh, okay. So then you're set.
There you go.
Yeah.
Nice.
Yeah, it's
awesome.
a very good headset.
Yeah.
I'm actually thinking about replaying Half-Life Alyx again sometime soon. But I think I'm going to start from the beginning, because I'm like somewhere a few hours in, and whenever I play, I'm like, wait a minute, how do I do the thing?
Yeah.
I'm like some weird puzzle thing that shouldn't be a problem, but I don't remember anything, so I feel like I got to replay that as well.
Yeah, and then we have we have all of the fan updates, or not updates, but fan versions like Black Mesa and stuff like that. So like it's never been a better time to dive in for a lot of people.
Right. Yeah. Yes, it is a great time, right? Like, because you're going to jump into it whenever you're ready for it. Like, yeah, everything's coming up, Millhouse.
Yeah, it is. Okay, we got 2 categories left, and we got to get out of here in 8 minutes. So we got to go fast. This category, we're all just going to say our answer and move on. This is our most anticipated game for 2025. Carrie, what is it?
Avowed. I've been waiting for this since 2020.
Ooh,
I'm looking forward to that.
Russ?
Metal Gear Solid Delta, because it's like that's the start of the saga, and I'm ready for HD, because that game sucks playing in like low res textures and the PS2 colors. So
Rich? Yes, so everything's brown.
Right.
Doom to Dark Ages, but like I do want to say real quick, I am worried, not worried, but I do have my conflictions. I'm conflicted, right? Just with the Hugo Martin, excuse me, what was the name of the composer?
That he felt like he was treated poorly, and
Yes.
they
So
didn't
good
give him
too.
credit
Mick
or
Gordon.
something.
Mick Gordon.
Yes.
Yeah, so I do have my reservations about that, but I'm just a big Doom fan, so I'm really looking forward to the Dark Ages.
So I had 2, and Russ took mine, Metal Gear Solid Delta. I was very excited for that. But the other one for me, I've been waiting for it forever, and that is Metroid Prime 4. I cannot wait to get hands-on with Metroid Prime 4.
Very good.
All right, so it's now our game of the year. We all got to pick one, and we have 6 minutes in which to do that. So, Rich, start us off.
Way to start me off, because I'm going to say Balatro, and everybody knows how I feel about that game. So
Everybody knows.
mine is short. That's my game of the year.
Were you a little upset when it didn't win last night?
Honestly, no. I am really I don't think Astrobot is my game of the year, but I am super happy with that pick. Like, I feel like it's a big celebration of video games. Like, what's not to love? So I'm happy with Astrobot winning.
Russ, what about you? What's your game of the year this year? Last year, wait, hold on. Rich, what was your game of the year last year?
Baldur's Gate 3.
Okay. And then Russ, yours last year was Super Mario Wonder, right?
Yeah, and I said it was going to be my game of the year this year too, because I was taking my time with it. But something happened this year that made me not like playing Nintendo games as much anymore, so I have not been playing that one.
So what's yours for this year?
It was going to be reluctantly Balatro, and just that time on screen, that's been my number one game, you know. But I'm going to do Astrobot, because even though I still don't think this is probably game of the year, we talked about this in the last kind of video episode or whatever, but I still think that, yeah, totally needs the recognition. I want people to vote for this one as an option too, and so I'm going to put that as my game of the year, because I'm still loving that game. I'm only halfway through, but man, it's so good.
We did an episode a couple of weeks ago, or 3 weeks ago, I think, where we talked about the nominations for the Game Awards, and I wasn't sure if Final Fantasy VII Rebirth belonged in that because it's a remake or whatever, and then Russ gave me permission to say that was the one that I wanted to win, and so for me, my game of the year is Final Fantasy VII Rebirth. I loved every second of that game, and I may buy it again when it comes to PC next month.
30% off.
Yeah, I know.
That.
It's so good. It's such a great game. Carrie, what about you, man?
Taking it home. This is for all the marbles, everyone. This is the actual 2024 Game of the Year. And that is
they get to pick. Get to pick.
It's Animal Well. Animal Well is 2024 Game of the Year. I love that game so much. I enjoyed it thoroughly. I was so glad that I played it day one. I was so glad that I got to play it free of spoilers and exactly how you should enjoy the game. You should not have any clue as to what's going on. The thrill and joy of discovery is phenomenal in that game. I think one of the things that I said was it makes you feel so clever because it's so cleverly designed. And it's such a good game. That game should have won Game of the Year. Should have been included in Game of the Year at the very least. It got robbed for Indie Game of the Year, but Balatro, I am okay in that can win as well.
So I'm going to put all of our nominations in a Google form, which will be linked in the description down below that like button. So scroll on down there, click like, and then click on the form. You guys will vote, and in early next year, probably the first episode in January or something, we will talk about what you guys picked as the NerdNest Awards for this year. We have exactly 3 minutes left. Rich, what's your next video?
No idea. Some news video. Yeah, I'm going to do the Steam Deck news.
Steam Deck news.
Yes.
Shocker. Carrie.
So I have to bang out a video, but Russ probably already has one out pretty soon. Is the new Ambernick one? What I love about this is the color for this one. I got this color. Yeah, that color. They call it blue when it's totally Nintendo purple.
Purple. Yeah.
But obviously they didn't want to put that there. It's not even like purple or indigo. It's blue. So that one I'm going to try to I really just have to try to crank that out. But yes, that's probably going to be my next. But my actual video that I'm looking forward to that keeps on getting delayed is the B-Link GPU dock. But also getting it how-to video to how to play Windows games on a PC using only a controller for everything.
Very cool. Russ, what's your next video, man?
It's going to be on that same device. It'll come out this weekend. And then I want to do a Retroid Pocket 5 starter guide. I'm in a crunch right now to try to make as many videos as I can before my parents get here in like a week and a half, because we're going to do family stuff, all the way up to the new year. And so I just want to get out as much content as I can now, because there is going to be a lull for a couple of weeks.
Very cool. Rich? Oh, no, I already talked.
You.
Hey.
Bill.
I just put out this video today about the Ion Neo Pocket Evo, which it has the same internals as this, but it's widescreen. It's really nice. It's a very, very nice machine. Comes in at about $500, and I like it a lot, but it's not perfect. So make sure you check out that video. But we have 1 minute left for me to tell everybody thank you for hanging out with us for an hour and 40 minutes. You guys are awesome. Thank you so much. We really do appreciate you, and hope to see you on the next one. Stay rad. Bye-bye.